Obviously, we know how any meets tend to do in LCS, but I have really big hopes for
It's
APA. I
the
think the team
JoJo
is great.
MVP season, TDS. We don't have to live. We don't have to be afraid anymore. All
I hope
right,
it's
you
the
can.
case. Like I'm so hopeful for
And
that.
David
And
is good
JoJo,
again, baby. We're
dangerous.
back on top. It's season one. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Salt Mine. This is Season 2, Episode 4, where we have just passed the midway point of the NACL season. My name's Gordo. I'm joined by Slayer and TDS on another three-man panel, and it's been an interesting first round robin. It's been a while since we've even had like a first round robin in the NACL because we were playing single round robin back in
Yeah.
spring. How you guys felt? How are you feeling coming out of the first round robin? Just to kick things off a little bit.
I
You
would
know,
say. Oh,
go
go
ahead,
ahead,
TDS. Go.
Slayer.
No, no, no. You go. You're going.
Okay. So after what happened in spring with everyone just going forward with their own like schedules and not even having a chance to see second chances of certain teams, I'm kind of glad we're getting this opportunity because there are certain teams that still are hard to really pinpoint on what to expect around them, right? The fact that Maryville is doing so well, even though it looked like their start was going to be a pretty big description of what could happen. They have been able to turn around really well and have been performing to a really good standard. I think AoE is one of the doomest orcs at this point, not because they are necessarily super bad, but there's been a lot of like weird things around their roster, and the way that they play hasn't really given me a lot of hope. Now, obviously, there were some news with Supernova, but I don't think that that is going to impact them as much. But they still aren't really bringing the results. I think there's a clear number one, even though they lost the game this week. There's a clear number one that it's TLC, and I feel like they are going to keep performing to a really high level. And the other interesting part or the other interesting one that I'm really trying to look forward to is wildcard because even though they lost this week, I think they had a 2-0 this week. If I'm not wrong, just quickly
They had a
checking.
2-0. Yeah, they
Yeah,
two wild card
they 2-0'd
2-0'd.
Fear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Fear.
no, I mean they got 2-0
Oh,
this
by
week is what I
team.
want to
Oh,
say.
by
Yeah,
TLC.
but TLC. So
Yeah.
technically, it's not about showing. You got 2-0 by the number one team in the league, and the rest were really good results. So far, wildcard really impressive, really good. Samudo, no control words, but still performing to a really high degree. I'm really excited for the team how they are going to go forward.
Listen, TDS. Control wards, buying them stunts your growth to hit core items. So if you don't buy any of them,
Sure.
you hit those items quicker and you can perform like Zamudo. Now, this is not
It's an
solo
LS
queue
student
advice.
through and through for sure.
Yeah, LS student. This is not solo queue advice, folks. So don't
So,
take that as solo queue.
here's the weird thing, though. Quickly, if you're as good as Samudo and win almost every lane, or can perform in every lane, then yeah, technically that is going to happen because you don't need the gold in the pink words.
Yeah, true. So just be as good as Zamudo. I mean, that's an easy
Get
solution,
good,
right?
pretty much.
Yeah, no, I share a lot of the sentiment too. I said, I think that I really like. I'm really excited to go into the second round, of round robin because now we get to just see. I feel like this is a lot more telling of how not only are some team like how we should perceive some teams, but more importantly how these teams are going to perceive other teams, if you know what I mean. Because sometimes like in the case of like some of the games you play against AoE, right? Like they had that total chaos week where you were playing a roster that got hot fixed right before you played them. Like how can you really gauge AoE now you have a shot at them again if you're some of those teams that play them? How does AoE get to gauge some of these teams now that their roster was all in turmoil? And yeah, and then the big bad question comes along is how do you handle TLC, which should be on the mind of every one of these teams by this point as well. I think I think this is just really well done because I think 3 weeks every team outside of TLC has had some sort of like, surprising outcome, like a surprisingly good week, kind of a down week as well. So it started to balance out and we can go into this next phase to really see what they're made of and to playoffs.
Yeah, I share the excitement going into a second round robin here. I think it's especially important in NACL just because, and maybe not in every split for forever, but at least in this split, we're really a kind of critical mass of rookies here, especially. So it's like there are so many players, and I have not counted, but there are so many players that are in their rookie split of tier 2. They're coming from tier 3, but it's like just off the top of my head, right? Like it's like most of the Supernova roster, a bunch of AOE players,
Team Fish
Zamudo.
Taco.
What was that?
3 from Maryville.
Decent amount of Team Fish Taco, right?
Yeah, a bunch of Team Fish Taco, a bunch of Maryville. Yeah, like a bunch of these guys have not played at this level, so there's got to be like at least 10, maybe more. Um, not to do math on live. But it's definitely going to be important for me to see them go at a second round against some of these teams. And I thinking about it, right, like thinking about some of the like the world's play-in formats we've had where there have been like single round robins that have always had weird results, and like having watched some of LEC's new format where there's a single round robin for seeding, and like I'm coming off of I've been casting the North American Strikers League, which is the new North American Omega Strikers League. They did single round robin for their regular season, and I didn't really like it. I think I've like this year has really fully calcified the opinion for me that I just really don't like seeing single round robin in these kind of tournament formats. Only getting to see these teams play each other once on a given day feels like it creates very weird swingy results in regards to like how the teams perform against one another, right?
I will always back Swiss. Swiss format, I think, is the best. To pull from a game I also casted as in League of Legends. CSGO. I love CSGO because they always do Swiss.
New Worlds format. Gonna be pretty much Swiss. Like, it's not exactly Swiss, but it's basically Swiss.
I feel like the biggest thing for that, right? It's not only the fact that it's just once you get to see them, but like the form at one point can vary so much to the form at a second point. Like even in the NACL we have BO2s, right? So even though you technically see 2 games of them in the in one round robin, or in the previous in spring we had the BO2 in the one round robin format. So technically you saw them play 2 games, but it was 2 games on the same day.
Yeah.
That team on that day really wasn't the same team as the one that progressed forward in the tournament. So the fact that you're just playing it once really affects the dynamic of how they set up and how they change, or what could happen later on if they change after that series. And I think that that's a huge issue that thankfully is getting kind of resolved. And I feel like that's what a huge variety of formats give you, is the opportunity to see that getting to play once against in any sport, in any team, in any way, really doesn't give you the full picture. Like even in sports, to quote some of them, like you have in the NBA 7 games for a reason. It's because one game, one day really doesn't define the way that a team can play in general. Same for in soccer, you get the chance to play 2 games in most competitions apart from the final, and then you get a huge amount of opportunities to really showcase what the team is capable of without really defining on one day performance. And I think that really changes a lot of the dynamics.
Yeah,
great point.
Definitely agree with that as well. So, well, with that, let's quite a long icebreaker there. Let's get into Player of the Week. Let's get back to the regular run of show stuff here. Slayer and I were talking a little bit before we got started that it feels like it's a constant battle to not just pick a TLC player every week. So I mean I am consciously participating in that battle, but so I'm gonna kind of hedge here, right? I'm gonna say, first of all, I think the best player this week has got to be APA. Like I think I end up just picking APA as my player of the week. I will like hedge a little bit and just say, like, if you're coming here and you don't want to just hear the name of a TL player every single week, if they're going to keep going 5-1 every week, which they have, then I think my non-TL player of the week is probably Meech.
Okay. That's an interesting one, actually. Not a bad one.
No. I also prescribe to this logic. I want to get that out of the way. I think APA does definitely deserve it. My shout out is actually, interestingly enough, I'm going to give it to Zeyzal. So I think Zeyzal gets the shout from me, and that is a little bit biased because I am a Zeyzal stan, and I don't care.
They're having to do well.
I would say, taking away the fact as well from TLC, as always, I would also incline towards APA. I'm already one of the biggest APA fanboys anyway, so it's good that he's performing and just pushing forward the narrative that he is really the best mid laner so far in the NACL, and it's really good. And once again, it really feels like you die and live by the way APA is able to accomplish in TLC, and that is really shown in the only game that they lost. It's really shown that. So also pushing the narrative that he's really one of the best players and the best player, and really depending on them. But I would go. Mine comes from Maryville, actually. Yeah, I wanted to say Odd Orange. I've been impressed with the way that he's been playing so
Hmm.
far. As a jungler, he facilitates a lot for what the team needs, and he is one of the main reasons and one of the things that I brought last week into what Maribel is showcasing that I think every NA team needs to do if they want to have or if they want to have good competition internationally, and that's bring chaos into the mix every time you go into the play. Because the more chaos exists, the easier it is to grab the opponents towards your level and make it a fair fight. I think that Orange is a specialist in this. He forces fights in a way that makes it so that everything is so chaotic, so weird, so out of place that it brings opponents towards their level. I think that he forced so many things off of the fly in their 2 victory that made it so that they could fight on an equal field on an equal ground. Even though I think Fly C players are better, particularly Masu. I think that even though I think Masu is better than Scary Jerry in a lot of ways, I think that he was able to level that playing field by just forcing the fight into such a chaotic way that it made it so that MU could win the fights. And I think that Orange is a specialist at doing this, and really the main factor into why I think Maribel is doing so great so far.
Yeah, I think you could carry that sentiment. I'm gonna save because I'm sure we're gonna talk more about Maryville down the line here. But I think there's also another member on that squad that, at least in the Fly C series, was just unadulterated chaos, especially in that big game one comeback. We'll get to that. My reasoning I want to go with Zazel is because I'm a fan of the meta when there's engaged supports at the top. I think as much like little niche things as you can do with enchanters to really swing fights. Uh, when you get on these like high level enchanters and you get to start fights, it's a lot more fun to watch and you have a lot more onus as a support player. Zazel was playing Rakan and Rel this entire weekend and constantly was just creating so many good advantages. Especially, I really liked his Rel. Some of these Magnet Storms were absolutely crazy. Especially, it wasn't even just in fights too. He just was such a presence on the Rel in lane, and a lot of those DSG wins were not close. Like not like very few of them were close. Like the Supernova series, they barely looked close at any point. Even against Fear as well, those games were out of hand early, and parts of that is like Gordo's going to talk about because Meech was just also popping off, but Zazel I think set up so well, and I'm such a fan of engaged support meta that he didn't play a single enchanter the entire weekend, and they went 5-1. So shout out Zazel for that. I look forward to more. Hopefully the meta isn't tweaked too far away where he can keep dominating. I guess Rel won't be in his hands anymore after the next patch. It might be into his teammates, depending on how the changes go towards the jungle Rel. But Rel being the model of the story here is Rel being good in the meta is one of my favorite things, and Zazel showed why.
Yeah, I think, and my reasoning is pretty similar. I think you can really go back and forth on Zazel versus Meech if you're picking a nominee from Disguised. I floated Young around a little bit too this week, but I think that Rise game against Maryville really kind of sinks him.
Yeah.
It's not. This was a weird week with some of my favorite mid laners in the league picking weird counter picks and just running it, man. Shout out to my boy Shochi and his Katarina game as well. Yeah, just a weird week for that, and I think that comes pretty close to DQing Young for me this week. Just a real rough game, but otherwise he was very good. And for Meech, yeah, I think it's him and Zazel. Like 3 out of their 6 games, they are just like gapping bot lane. One game is a wash right away because of the Young Rise performance and Get Back getting to run the map. And then the others are like comebacks in like team fighty kind of scaly games. And I was really impressed by Meech's Xayah performances in those kinds of games. That just makes me give it to him, which is good. I really wanted a week like this out of Meech for a while because, yeah, he's like been up there for a while as one of those like really highly touted ADC prospects. And I'm happy to like be reminded of that again for the first time since it feels like since he was on CLG, right? It feels like he hasn't really had that big one of those big pop off weeks on DSG so far. So I'm happy to see that out of him again.
And we
He was
talked
on
about
CLG.
What was
yeah,
that?
he was.
I'm just saying he was on CLG, so
Yeah, he
kind of hard
was.
to be able to accomplish that before. as
True.
well.
Well, I mean, he was that dude. CLG Challengers was good. They had Copy, they had Jenkins, all of
True.
these fallen soldiers. Jenkins is a sub on 100 Thieves now, right? I think he's still
Oh,
around.
he's that. Oh,
I think he
really?
got a contract. He's like a sub.
I think
I'm
so.
glad on that then. Honestly,
Uh,
he could have been on NACL as well, but
Yeah, that's
I'm
like
glad
him
he's
and like
still he's here.
Array and like all of your like almost all your favorite NACL players from last split who are not back are like sitting in sub roles on LCS teams. Like
Yeah,
that's where, yeah, except for
just
XU who is kind of gone.
yeah.
he's training in the mountains. He's doing
I
the
hope so. I hope he's
whole
training in the
anime
mountains. Otherwise, he's
protagonist.
filling out
Yeah,
college
like
apps,
Yeah.
which is
it's one of the
probably
two.
not what you're hoping
Or
for.
maybe he's doing doing both.
Yeah.
Going to college in China maybe, and he's doing both at the same time. Something like that. That's the best alternative he can go for.
Yeah,
I I was just gonna say with Meech, it's also great to see a week like this from him because we talked about it in the primer that you could give Meech some slack for last split because of maybe his support play, but now he's sitting next to Zazel. So
yeah,
if he didn't step up in weeks like this, then you got to sell a lot of stock in Meech. But weeks like this show why
yeah.
why we people like us believe in him. So
Yeah, I do think Breezy's gone up in my stocks a little bit this split, but I'm not really interested in a tangent about Breezy right now. Let's get into some league news and see what else we've got cooking here. So I want to talk about this Eevee tweet that dropped this week. Just to read it verbatim and cut off the part that we don't care about. Sources: Tyler1 attempted to join NACL for the summer split but was denied. Other content creators such as Moist and Mr. Beast have also expressed their interest in joining the NACL. So there's been a lot of conversation about streamer orgs and the opportunity that the open circuit format of the NACL offers for these orgs to get involved in League of Legends in maybe a more legitimate way than they previously could. I want to hear some takes. I just want to discuss creator orgs in the NACL and how we think that can influence stuff in the future.
So I'm curious. I guess there's no way to clarify it. The tweet is a little ambiguous. I, I'm assuming he meant Tyler1 wanted to field a roster. But when I
Yes,
first
yes.
okay,
I'm
when I
almost
first
certain
read
that
it,
is what he means.
when
That
I
would be
first read it, I was
great.
like, Tyler1 was trying to field a roster spot on an NACL team, which I guess you could kind of misskew. I mean, he's got the qualifications to at least, from a rank
Yeah, like a
standpoint.
team
So
Yeah,
wanted to run
technically he
Tyler1 and
could.
he failed the behavior check.
yeah,
I
or
guess you
some
could read it that way.
yeah, that's how I initially read it, and then when I read further about the other streamers, I was like, okay, this is probably you want to pay for a team.
Just
I
a quick thing though, we'll say technically we have Duo King, so I wouldn't be surprised if Tyler1 passed any sort of behavioral check. Just
yeah,
saying.
that's a really good point actually. I didn't
Just
think about
saying,
that.
yeah.
Um, but I think my take firmly stands in the fact that hey, that's really first of all, hey, high quality streamers, Mr. Beast, all you guys, thank you for being interested in the NACL because that's great for it overall. But you also need to realize that Disguised Toastway getting into the NACL was like supposed to be a really big exception, kind of like the chaotic nature of what was going on with North American League at the time that he got in that spot. And some of us still feel kind of iffy about the fact that that's how they got into the league after the stipend sort of thing came across for these NACL teams. And rest in peace, Tony Top. But the bottom line is, hey, Mr. Beast, if you want to make it, field a roster good enough to just destroy the open qualifiers and get in the hard way. I mean, it's open for a reason. I feel like you can express interest and maybe try and skip a step, but there's no reason to. They should why not field a roster for open qualifiers? Why aren't they in open qualifiers right now?
And I think that's the important question, right? And that's I'm glad that you bring this up, Slayer, because I would have had to otherwise. And now I get to just segue right into what I wanted to say, which is like I do think this signals to me like a little bit, and maybe I'm reading into it too much, but the fact that they aren't in open qualifiers, I think signals to me like a little bit of a lack of maybe legitimacy around the promotion relegation process right now. Because really, if you take a step back and think about it, we're on the second official split of NACL. There has yet to be an NACL offseason where you could not apply to get a free spot. That is how we opened things up when we first expanded to 16. There was no qualifier tournament there. And then we ignored the qualifier tournament for summer and just let people apply again. So we know that's fact number one. Fact number two is we know from TikTok Tony Top, Team Tony Top, Douya and Tony Top, that they were not allowed to sell their spot. They asked to sell their spot to get a little bit of money for their efforts, and they were declined. They had to pull out, and their spot was given away. So, obviously, Tyler One and Moist and Mr. Beast, if they're interested and are not fielding OQ rosters, they either think fact number one will not change, or they think fact number two will change. It's got to be one of the two, right? They've got to either think that they will be able to apply and get in for free when teams drop out, or they have to think that they will be able to just buy a spot.
Well, for fact number one, technically they are three, right? And we have three remaining academy rosters. So if you do the math, technically that's the one-on-one situation.
What a
Now,
league would that be?
true. There's also another probability, right? Like they buy a brand.
Yeah.
One team goes in, they just qualify, they buy that brand and stick their name on top of it, and they just take without really taking any spot. They just what is the name in English? They just
Partner.
yeah, partner. No, but there's another one. Sponsor. That's what I was thinking. Partner or
Hmm.
sponsor, the org that comes up and they just stamp their name on top of it and that's it. So here's my thing. I'm not against orgs entering, just slamming their way in without qualifying. Particularly, I'm not against the creator orgs doing that. And my reasoning is because I think that NA needs this sort of like number showcase to come in and get more attention onto it. So I think that the best way possible for that is these creator orgs. And I think particularly why I like it more happening on NACL than happening on LCS, because I remember I saw a point like, if these orgs come in, more than likely, or probably, NACL could be more viewed than LCS. And I think that's possible as well. If Mr. Beast, Moist, and Toast are all in the same league and they play games on the same time with them co-streaming or anything like that, like I'm pretty sure LCS numbers would be lower than that. And I think that for NACL would be a really good thing. The fact that it happens for NACL would be really good, better than for LCS, because I think that having the roots, the supposed roots of your competition be really watched or really viewed, and then you slowly pull them upwards. You can, for example, maybe Mr. Beast now, after having the NACL slot, goes up and gets an LCS slot. Now you can pull all that into the LCS. It's a slow, I would say it's a slower way of trying to get the viewership up, but from the ground up, legitimately from the ground up, from the amateur scene. And I would think that's a really good way to try and get viewership and numbers back in a way that it's not just forced out of nowhere. Like it's not just how is it called? It's not just like random, or well, there was a better word, but it's not just random. Like you are working on the process and you're building it up slowly. And I think that would be a really good way for any to come back from the ground up.
You also could then make sure that you could put like in the promotion for, like, say, we're gonna run with Mr. Beast here. Mr. Beast, if we're gonna promote you to LCS, you have to field a challengers roster, because that can really appease the Players Association, which would be a really good idea. I mean, stop me if I've said this before, but TDS has an amazing idea. I think that would be one great way for me to like cope with the fact, because I'm definitely more of the integrity guy. Like, hey, we should keep the integrity of the open qualifiers. Like, what are we without integrity? But viewers are kind of everything. Everybody, that's where a lot of this is going to come from. So I would be fine making that sort of decision, or back that decision. What I find really interesting out of all the people that got named is specifically Moist, because I do know Charlie and all those guys, when they first kicked off their esports teams, like I think it was Rocket League first, like they didn't get any. I don't think they got any special treatment, like straight promotion to certain. I will preface this by saying I don't know a lot about how Rocket League's circuits work. I assume they work similar to like CS Go, and they're a lot more open and they lead up to major events. But I don't think Moist got any special treatment. Like they made that roster. Maybe it was a really good roster, and they had to make them run through qualifiers like normal. So out of all the people that I saw listed that had interest but didn't really capitalize on open qualifiers. I was interestingly shocked to see that Moist didn't capitalize on that because they've already ran through lower. Sorry, Rocket League fans, lower tier esports, and made it all the way to winning championships, and they did it the hard way. Why didn't they just try that with the NACL and the open qualifier? Because, I mean, could they really have not? I don't. I can't spitball and figure out what sort of roster they could have made. But we've been talking about here for already. We talked about subs on other LCS teams that could
Yep.
be in the NACL and favorite players. Like that's just the tip of the iceberg. For weeks now, we've been like, so and so people aren't in the league. Why aren't they? And we even, I think you guys even joked maybe last week or maybe the week before when I was on. We joked about making a list of players that weren't in the league that were like we're tracking to see if they get added. So I hope Moist, because I really am a fan of Moist and the way that they've gone into esports. Just a little surprised they didn't take the open qualifier route compared to those other names.
Well, there's just quickly, there's kind of an argument that maybe they were told something behind the scenes that made them rethink their decision.
True.
And by that I mean if they talk directly with LCS, right, with the LCS commissioner and all that, and they got information about something happening next year, for example, because we really don't know about the future of NACL past this year. So if they got information about something happening there or potentially happening, and that may have affected some decision making from them. And I think for people like Mr. Beast, like Moist, like some of them that are really big, I would argue they would be not entitled, but certainly at least get a bit of information that the public obviously doesn't get. So I
Yep.
think that maybe that is an scenario that could happen. Hopefully not a doomer scenario, but something that maybe affects their decision.
Yeah, I can see that Doomer angle for sure. The kind of
Let's hope not.
copier version of that is that they, like stuff is just so haphazard right now. Like there's so little stability, with everything burning down, with the LCS being delayed, right? It's like there's a lot of questions in the air about what NACL would look like this split and what it's going to look like next split. Maybe just deciding like, hey, I don't want to be a part of that fire right now. Let's wait and see how things settle down. That's a potential angle. Arsh brought up to me on Twitter that it's you want to make like a big PR move when you join this game and this league, and you're gonna kind of like you're gonna be like drip feeding that over weeks if you're playing in open qualifiers. Whereas, maybe these orgs would rather pull like a disguised and just buy their way in and field a new big fancy roster, than be like, featured on like the 60 viewer OQ streams as their first venture. Um,
Yeah.
that's arguable. I think those angles are possible as well. Yeah, I do think my biggest concern though is that I don't care if they buy in. Pretty much for all the reasons TDS and Slayer said, right? Because it's like viewership over everything, publicity over everything. We need North American League of Legends to not die. I'm willing to make some concessions on my morals to make sure that people are watching. But I do something I would not be happy conceding is if it's just this stupid application process every time teams drop out again, where it's just all behind closed doors and there's very little accountability. And I was saying this when DSG got let in, right? Is like maybe in the future you're not going to be as happy or thrilled to have these people in the league as we are with Disguised, right? And not everybody is going to be as squeaky clean as Disguised, and there's not always going to be that perfect option available. So if we still don't have commitment from the challengers teams that they're going to be staying next split, there's potential that they drop. There's orgs that have had financial struggles that pretty openly. There's orgs that have had other turmoil pretty openly. It's hard to be confident that even if nobody new qualifies, that all 10 of these orgs will still be here next year. And I wish we had a solid, confirmed process for how those slots will be filled, but we don't have that. Instead, we just gave them out at random this last offseason. So now we're going to be stuck in that position again, where it's like, what happens if FlyQuest drops their challengers team? Nobody knows because we didn't set a process for it. So that's going to be a little bit of a question going
Yeah.
forward.
I'm also curious on one particular thing. So, do you have to be NA to have your roster here?
Like, what do you mean by you?
So
I mean, like, do you need to have at least 5 players in a residence to
You
have
need
your
to have
roster?
four NA residents. I think you can have one
Any
import
resident.
now.
Okay. Is that the same logic? Or, well, maybe this is not the best, like, place to ask it, but is that the same logic in other places, in other, like, LC, Riot-related regions? Because
well,
I could see an argument for some content creators to not come into an A, but instead go to other places to
Like
try and,
ERLs?
and broaden their market. Yeah,
like
because like
EMEA.
technically it's not impossible to do that. Like once again, I'll use my card. I'm South American. I'm Colombian. I still know obviously the big personalities, but I know that the game is not necessarily dead. It's kind of in the half spot, and that could also be a marketing opportunity for some streamers to make their brand even bigger in Latin America, for example. So if they could technically just get in here with players from here, let's say they bring two NA players to also have like the English audience, but then uh fly also bring the Latin American players, and you mix the roster and you put your brand here. Would that be something that Riot would be okay with doing? And if they can do it, then is there any real incentive to try and stay in NA? Because it's better for they are already known in North America, so they could just make their brand even bigger in other places with that.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's interesting because yeah, I wonder what the it's is it EMEA? EMEA, is that what they call the
It's in
EMEA,
Eurobond.
yeah.
Yeah.
EMEA? Yeah, because I hate that I keep pulling off a CS:GO, but I mean the thing that is happening with some of like the North American orgs that have been mainstays of NA for a while is now they're fielding international rosters so that they can pull European players, and
Yeah.
it's pissing off a lot of North America. I think a move like you're talking about TDS could piss off a lot of North America, but at the end of the day, you're not really going to care about how much North America cares if you're trying to get the best fielded roster, best viewership, whatever. That's an interesting prospect though because it has happened to North American branded orgs in different games already.
Yeah,
Um,
like I would argue, and this obviously no attack to anyone, but I feel like NA doesn't realize how big the market outside of NA, both in Latin America and Europe is. Like
yeah.
the reality is that if you try to go there and you have like if you're already known in NA, but there's still people that know you in EU, or you're able to get with a personality that is known in EU or Latin America, for example, then you're able to broaden your brand even more massively than just staying in an A. And I think that the lack of realization that you can get so much recognition but just going to Latin America or EU is something that some NA fans may not realize, but some bigger brands may at the end of the day. Like once again, like I know Evi is one of the most known ones from Europe because he works with multiple organizations, that he's one of the more like known personalities. But in the same like venture that he has currently with one ex-football player, Gerald Piqué, there are multiple Spanish streamers, Mexican streamers. I think there's even maybe an Argentinian streamer. I'm not 100% sure, but there are multiple streamers that are not only from Spain. There are Mexican as well, and the brand from Mexican streamers is really big. Like they are really big worldwide. So I would argue you can make an argument that looking for that brand could also be something to look for, and that can maybe affect the future of an A from some orgs that or content creators that maybe don't want to join here, but instead go somewhere cheaper that may make their brand bigger in a way, in a different way.
Um, and
The le-
go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead, Gordo.
I was just gonna say NACL can be pretty cheap now. Is I guess the hope, the
True.
saving grace there. Um, but yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's a possibility as well. I did confirm, by the way, so to anybody who wants to fact check me, the Leaguepedia rulebook is still the spring rulebook. They didn't update it. They're wrong. Go to Greg Adler's Twitter. He posted the new rulebook there. That's what I'm going off of, and that one says you can have one import.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there is
Okay.
one.
The only thing before TDS brought up that good point was I was just gonna say when going back to how we all of us are kind of like integrity driven, but we'd make the exception for viewership. The one thing I would say if there's a situation where some of these teams like I don't know AOE's not doing great right now, maybe they want to sell get out of their spot, Supernova something like that. If they want to sell, The only thing I would not be okay with is if they do this thing they pulled with Tony Top, where it's like, "Hey, we want to sell our spot. We earned the spot. No, we know you have to leave anyways. Get out, and we're just gonna give the spot away." Like
Exactly. Yeah.
that's not good.
That's the thing.
So you
Yeah,
gotta make.
if we open up the market and do it like LCS, where you could sell your spot, it's your property, then I'm fine with that because, and I mean, at least in my mind, that doesn't damage the integrity of the promotion relegation system, right? Because
Mhm.
then you can still promote and sell like that. Then is
Yeah.
still a
Yeah.
viable path forward. My big concern is that when you're giving them away for free and can't sell them, now it's like that's like double dipping on it being bad, like not really being
Yeah.
a valuable asset, right? And like not only do you have to work to promote, but you also don't really have any ability to leverage it as equity, and you also people are getting given them for free, so even if you could leverage them for equity, the value would be severely dampened, which then like reduces the value of your org, right? Like even if you can't sell the spot, right, as we've seen with Supernova, you could sell Supernova and then they get the spot, but like even that value is damaged when we're just giving them away for free. So I think it's bad for all the orgs to be giving these away for free. I think it's fine for the orgs, even good for the orgs, if you could sell the spots.
New business model, ladies and gentlemen. If this is true, just continuously pay for open qualifier rosters that will get you promoted, and then sell your spot and repeat for profit.
Well,
That was how,
wasn't
yeah, that
that
was Golden Glue and Chris's professional career for like
Yeah.
3 or 4
wasn't that
years.
The Cloud9 way in a way? Like
Yeah.
that was their way to financial success. It's
Yeah,
get
nobody was ever
good
able to
academy
like
rosters.
really like everybody always talked about it, and there was never really an org that was just cranking them out, like just
Yeah.
promoting every freaking year and pocketing an extra cool few million. I think it's Cloud9 and TL promoted once each and sold one spot each, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Cloud9 promoted the org that would later become FlyQuest. Team Liquid promoted the org that would later become Gravity.
Good old Gravity. That's a callback.
Yeah,
That's
I
good.
love the leather jackets as team uniform. That was fun.
Yeah.
The
I'll never
biker gang team. Yep.
Yeah.
I'll never forget the first time I ever went to. I was a young lad. And I went to the LCS studios, and you used to be able to after the game, they would line up and they'd walk down and they'd high five everybody if they won. The first team that I ever high fived all the team was that Gravity roster.
Let's go.
I'll never forget that. I
Man, that's
also
season 5. That's season 5 stuff.
yeah
Damn.
yeah true right. I also do want to preface this. I probably should start this at the beginning, but everybody listening, we don't have any insider information. We are completely speculating on this entire tweet, so
Yeah,
do not
no,
hold any of this against us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. I technically work with Supernova, but they do not give me any of this garbage. I don't know anything about their financials or their relationship with the league or anything like that. Let's we spend a lot of time on that league news, but that's fine. That's big news.
It was a fun
It's a
one.
good subject to chat about. But let's get back into the NACL of this split. We do have one roster change coming in for the second round robin. Evil Geniuses have dropped Soul and picked up Surdy. So return of the Evil Genius in the top lane. That they had previously, like, they've developed Surdy from the start, right? They had him on Prodigies, and then they had him
And
on
they kind of threw
Academy,
him away.
and then they got rid of him, yeah, for TL First last split.
Kind of.
Now bringing in Soul. So let's open up the floor there. Let's talk about Surdy and Soul in the same breath, and talk about what we think about this change.
So, player-wise, it's an upgrade because of how average Soul has been. Like, Soul really hasn't impressed, has had some bad games, had maybe one or two that you could say, okay, he's improving. But in general, I don't think there's anything stellar so far from Soul. And looking at EG's roster, I feel like that's the easiest part to try and upgrade, just on paper and also on performance. So if this works, great for Surdy because he can try and showcase his value. But I'm not sure if it's going to be that big because on paper, once again, Soul is the easiest to upgrade. But I think that EG has other problems that they need to address as well. Like even the win against TLC, wasn't really a convincing win in any factor. Like no player really convinced me in that win that I could say, okay, things are starting to look up. There already wasn't anything like that. So if maybe replacing Soul gives you a winning lane or a place to put resources into, I can see that being better. But as of now, I'm not convinced it's going to put them higher than they already are.
Yeah, I agree it's an upgrade, and I don't think it solves all of their problems. What I will say is, like, I think middle of the pack is, and by the way, I loved Soul coming in. I think Soul's trajectory's been great, and he's announced he's stepping away from competitive, so it seems like this is kind of a pseudo retirement. I mean, even when they do
Yep.
officially call it retirement, it doesn't mean that much in esports. It's pretty easy to leave and come back. So,
Yep.
never say never, but it does seem like he's stepping away, at least for the time being. And that's, I'll get into why that disappoints me in a bit, and what I've thought about Soul previously compared to now. But I will say, like, in terms of impact to the league right now, I agree that Surdy's an upgrade. I also think, like, I think saying, like, referring to Soul as average or middle of the pack, like, even that I think is giving him, like, a lot of credit that I don't think he's really earned this year. I mean, like, look at the top
Yeah.
laners in the league. It's like, I think it's Soul and arguably Concept are bottom two. Like, I would not put
Yeah.
I would not put any top laner in this league below Soul and Concept.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
Just a
like, I
quick.
think the two of them are kind of fighting it out at the bottom, and even Concept has
Yep.
had
No.
like some spikes. I think you can make a case for Concept over Soul or Soul over Concept. I think they're like ninth, 10th, pretty close, but they are in a tier of their own at the bottom right now. I think I don't.
Yeah, even Lunasia has impressed more,
Yeah, I
honestly.
think
Yeah.
Lunasia's looked good. I think Quacker's looked good. I
Quacker.
think
Yeah.
I mean the rookies, yeah, Quacker, Lunasia, Zamudo, Niles. Not even most of those aren't even two of those aren't even real rookies, but all of them look really good. I mean, Faisal, Fake God, Philip.
Niles.
They're good.
Yeah, I
Faisal,
mean,
Fake God, Philip, Bradley. They're all very
you're gonna,
good.
Yeah.
yeah,
It,
that really just speaks to wow. That really just speaks to the overperformance of I guess top really.
yeah,
Top
I
ranks
think it's a
supreme in
good. I
NACL.
think we got a good class of top laners actually. I feel, and I've
We
been saying
do.
that even before this split. Like I've been hyped up on NA top. Like and the next generation of NA top lanes kind of hype, man. Like
I'm
Faisal.
Yeah.
actually
I think Faisal's on the path to LCS.
I agree.
Like I think like. People have been really hyped on Bradley for a while. Like I think Zamudo's popping off, Lunasi's popping
Zamudo.
off. And
Yeah.
like Sniper is still just like waiting in the wings. He's a sub for 100 Thieves right now. Like
Yep.
Sniper's coming in soon.
I personally think
Hopefully.
if Quacker gets a call up from maybe next like another split, I could see him on a if they put him on a more I don't want to say stable, but you guys know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
around better talent in the NACL. I think Quacker is on a great trajectory too.
I
'Cause he's
agree. I worry Quacker's gonna get age discriminated because he's kind of older. But
yeah, that's a fair point.
I agree though. I would hope for that to happen.
He's
And even
he's done a lot
below,
with little.
I think even below there's good talent. Like Dragoon was one that
Yeah.
wasn't able to come up, and I think he's a good talent to look out for. So hopefully we get there's good opportunities to see them. I think actually Spring was one of the weaker top lane talent pools we had. Like I
Mm-hmm.
think top lane talent pool in the spring was kind of weak, and in summer it has been much better, much competitive, and I think a lot of that comes from not stepping away, but I think more people consolidating themselves. I think Faisal becoming much more of a staple in the roster and as a top laner. Obviously, Zamudo with a big surprise. The fact that even though I think Sniper was really good, he did have like he was coming up and on and off because of some problems behind the scenes that ended up happening. So I think that all of those factors combining made the previous class also having super weak teams made it also really hard to have competitive top lane matchups and things like that. So I think that this time around with closer teams, closer talent battling each other, I think that it's much better and it has showcased itself in the NCL.
And I'm excited to see Surdy join that, right? Like Surdy,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think is gonna be much more competitive with like that big class of guys who have had like highs and lows. I said at the end of last season, I think Surdy was the individually best player on a relegation team last split.
Yeah.
Um, I still believe that, and I'm
it's
excited to see what
understandable.
he'll be able to do now that he's back.
You know what's funny? If we take this further, the NA top pool of the future is looking really bright. If we're going off the logic of Zamudo being an LS product and he's come over and popped off, then technically you could also still rope Tenacity reforming and coming back
Could
as a
happen.
part of that pool as well.
Yeah.
If you
Reform.
want to.
I don't think he needs to reform.
He's
I
pretty
think he needs
Well,
openly
to have
like
these.
everybody leans so much into the content creation thing, but Tenacity has said like pretty straight up like he'll be looking for LCS offers
Yeah,
next year.
yeah. He just wanted a
Even
boot
then,
camp.
I think he may have like the a good improvement in Korea and having and him knowing English like could also end up leading to maybe opportunities in EU. Like could end up
Yeah,
happening.
Yeah.
yeah.
Like
He's
talking
still
about it,
technically.
EU probably has weaker like or not weaker, but some weak top laners that are replaceable. So I think
Mhm.
there's hope for anyone that can look into it.
I know, and he's still technically repping NA, even if he's doing it in a different region. Like,
True.
you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it still falls down. I do quickly because I know we kind of tangent. I also agree. I think Surdy's an upgrade because I think he's more of a stabilizer. I want to take the angle of if when you put him into this lineup, I think guys like Shaden can really benefit from it because a lot of these losses that you see from EG Challenger, especially against those lower tier teams, was teams were kind of starting to capitalize on bullying Soul. So now if you kind of get Surdy in there and I think he's a more stable product, so a bit of an upgrade. Guys like Shaden can benefit from this. Guys like Ryoma can as well, because I still don't have a lot of issues with the EG Challengers bottom lane. From at least what I've seen, I think it's outside of that in a lot of their losses. So if you bring Surdy in here, with a fresh new mental, fresh new perspective, the hunger to compete again, now he gets another shot on this Challengers roster. I think it will not only benefit him, benefit the team, but most importantly, in my eyes, benefit the mid jungle duo that they already have to deal with across with the solo lanes. So, yeah, I back with a lot what you guys said. I think that's another wrinkle to it.
Yeah.
Bonfire in shambles. He's the only one that really believed in
I
EG.
mean, he should
Yeah.
be thanking everybody for this change, right? Like his odds of being
No,
correct on his
his
prediction.
argument was that it was the same roster. So if
That's
one
true.
member
Well, like,
changes, I
listen,
think
his
it's
logic can be
technically
wrong,
wrong.
but when it comes to the end
Yeah.
of the season and we're comparing where you predicted to where you end up, Bonfire is going to be
That is
happy
true.
that this roster change happened. I think they're going to end higher now than they currently are. I think they'll end up
I
above
Potentially.
eighth.
you said bonfire. I don't know if this is going to count as a segue, but I did. Obviously, I watched last episode because I couldn't be here last week. I was in Maui for anybody that cares. But I found it very funny the part where he starts going on a tangent about how Maryville finishing like fifth or sixth is like a disappointing finish for Maryville, which I thought first of all was like kind of ludicrous to say. But the funniest thing to me is it's just classic bonfire. He says that, and where are they now in the standings? I mean, it might not hold, but it's just so funny to me.
It's holding true. It's all just going against what Bonfire brings forward. Like last split, even when he was technically right about Big, he wasn't right because they didn't win. So it's all just letting them on the perfect spot.
This is cruel. On the he's not even here
Well,
yet.
regardless if he was going to be here or not, I was going to come on and say that.
Fair,
So,
fair.
I would have
I
said
agree,
that if he was
fair.
here.
All right. It's important to be consistent in your opinions, but before we move on, I do want to talk about Soul a little bit, as I guess like a fucking career retrospective, right? Is
Yeah.
seems like he's kind of out there.
Yep.
It's like it's disappointing, but I think he clearly needed some kind of reset here. I mean, maybe some of the performance this split can be explained away by like the fact that he's considering retirement in the first place. Um, I do still think the dude deserves props for how quick his rise was. Like his um, ascension to playing in academy was just at a breakneck pace. Like I remember being in preseason and casting him in like AoE's tryouts for like random solo queue players. And he went from that to starting for AoE, making Proving Grounds, to getting to Academy, to playing some LCS games, to upgrading to a much better Academy team that at the time was far better resourced and funded. I don't think that's the case anymore, but at the beginning of this year, it certainly was. So I mean, yeah, he was racing through the North American scene. It's a shame that he seems to have hit some kind of wall this year. I'd like to believe that he could have gotten through it, but I mean, obviously, it's his choice how far he wants to take it. And I do think he deserves respect for how quickly he was able to make himself known and impressive, even if he never quite got the results he might have wanted out of it.
Also started with one of the best names possible, Anime Girl. I
True,
think it was
true.
Anime Girl. Good
OG
old
fans
times.
remember.
I was gonna say I wanted him to go. I was before he announced that he was fully stepping away when it was only a EV leak that Surdy was coming in. I was saying I do hope that he switches back to Anime Girl and goes and slams OQs again.
Would have been hilarious if he goes, and I hope that he comes back because I will say I was one of the people that said I hope he goes immediately for LCS and just keeps on trying there because as always I'm a trial by fire kind of person and I want to see them in the biggest stage immediately. I'd rather the better ones I'd rather they just skip academy and just go immediately into LCS. And that was something that I hoped for. So I think it performed really well to start it off, but obviously it's not how you start it, it's how you keep doing it. And it's also through the hard times. And I think that first week was good. Second week really was so hard on him, and then the continuation really affected him in TSM. I think the big wall he faced was being on TSM in one of the worst possible splits as well, with
Bro.
all what that was going on. Obviously, he wasn't on the, or maybe he did know about some potential changes future with everything that was going on. Who knows? But he wasn't in the point where they pretty much announced that they were stepping away of the LCS, so it's not like that affected him that much. But I do think that his time at TSM, something had to happen behind the scenes that kind of hit him really hard, and I feel like that since that point, he really wasn't the same player that prompted himself up into the scene, and then slowly but surely he couldn't go over that block and he couldn't come back to some performances that he has. Maybe a rest, a bit of a walk away from the scene can do him some good. He's still, I think he's 19 still or 20, so it's not like he's that old to try and come back to the scene. Once again, age is a stigma in esports, but realistically, in sports, the peak of your play is between 25 and 30 years. That's where you hit your peak in sports typically. So
Mm.
you should be able to come back around that age and still be really good if you want to. And if not, I hope he does something that he's glad to do after technically retiring. And if not, League of Legends 2 may come out eventually because this client is completely horrid. So hopefully they change that in League 2. But if not, hope him the best.
League 2. God. Can you
I do
imagine the
think, dude.
scenes?
I want us to do a. I hope Counter Strike 2. It's not Counter Strike 2, obviously, but you know what I mean. I
Well,
hope.
well, it technically is. No, it is.
Are they just calling it Counter Strike 2?
Yeah, I think it is
CS2,
Counter
Counter
Strike.
Strike
I didn't
2.
actually. I didn't
Yeah.
even know that. Well, yeah. Then never mind. I retract my tepidness.
That's why I'm here, Gordo.
Yeah, dude. I hope Counter Strike 2 is a huge success. By the way, because I want League to have that so freaking bad, man. Just take like 8 months and just rebuild everything and make it
Yeah.
less garbage. That's I would.
Like
From
I legitimately am fine with them reusing everything from the game except the client. Like if you change just the client and bring everything back, I'll be completely happy. Like I'm already sold on everything on the game apart from the client. Change that one part and that's it. I don't play anything else.
it is funny because CS2 is this big new screen, big new name. You want to know what it really is? It's visual updates across the board, sound updates to gun sounds. There's no change in
Yeah.
the recoil patterns. Smokes now do something a little different.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's like the
that's
biggest
all I
thing.
want, man. That's all I want for League.
Yeah.
I don't want big new mechanics. I just want a nice little revamp and
Updated
maybe a
graphic,
big
yeah.
old revamp for the client.
Yeah.
They no longer have words. Instead, they give like blue balls. They give you temporary vision and that's it.
And by all
No
metrics,
more words.
I'm speculating here, but the wideband uptick in CS:GO hit new peaks of player because people knew CS2 was coming. So like, it's already taken off. There's so many former pros because I could talk for hours about the Valorant CS:GO, the player switching. But so many of those guys, the old heads, they're all about to come back too. Like it looks like it's gonna absolutely explode. So hopefully it's a marker for other video game companies like Riot.
Just a quick thing before we move forward. I don't remember who announced it. I don't remember where it was and for what game, but somebody announced like some new like way to connect with people in the servers and things like that, like some way so that there's no lag behind it, something like that. I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was Riot, but I'm not sure for what.
I have not heard
Like
of
No
this.
clue.
something,
I've not
yeah,
heard this.
something that would have made. Actually, I think it was for the fighting game, like something that made it
Oh,
so that
like
you would have no delay when you were
they're
fighting.
always coming. Yeah, they're always coming with like
Oh.
new tech on that stuff, but I'm not close enough to FGC to know about it.
Oh, I know the term for that delay, but I thought the tip of my tongue. I know that that's an issue.
Like input
I
lag
know.
stuff,
Yeah,
or
input lag. Yeah.
Yeah,
hmm.
and I think Riot, like one of the big things with their game is that they are making some
Yeah, I remember this. This is like part of
revolutionary
the.
change
This is
for
like
that.
part of the selling stuff for Project. It's Project L.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
Project L.
Well, I will say CS2 also it's called Tick. Like they used to play on 64 Tick
Yeah,
servers. They did announce some new revolutionary
Okay.
system like that. So I mean
like the
it's not the
ticks
same
between
as
the
input.
ticks. I remember seeing
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's yeah. So they are actually so CS2 that is part of it too is that they're
that's all.
that's the equivalent of input lag.
That's all I want, Slayer.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
we've been speculating all episode long, boy. That's a way bigger speculation. We're talking about
True.
League of Legends too.
But the point here is you already copied a lot of things from the past. Copy this and this other thing if it works out, and that's it. Perfect.
True.
Yeah, sure.
Well, we're already at nearly an hour. I do want to take a little bit to just reflect on the, give us all a chance to talk about our favorite narratives so far of the midseason. First round robin out of the way. Yeah, let's just do this to like not go too far over an hour. Let's just everybody talk about one thing that they really want to highlight here at the midseason mark. I'll kick off. I think for me, it's just I've discovered. I think Wildcard is just my favorite team, and I'm really excited to see how this team continues to develop. I don't even care if Isles comes anymore at this point. Like I think Donbray has been so impressive, and like I'm honestly gonna be sad if Isles shows up because I don't think Donbray is gonna find another home immediately, and I would like to see him continue on this path, given that he is very young. And he has never gotten to play at this level before. Like he never even played in like a proving grounds. So I would be very excited to see how he's going to be able to do coming in towards the rest of this season. But yeah, I don't know. I was just watching VODs last weekend and I realized I was like sitting up in my chair more and way more excited when wildcard games were on. And I think that's what being a fan is. So I guess I'm a wildcard fan now. Love how this team has come together. Still a big Zamudo believer. And I want to see them get over that Team Liquid hurdle and find a way to challenge them by playoffs, because otherwise Team Liquid might just slam this whole league.
Yeah, is that not TDS's point that Team Liquid just gonna slam the whole league? I mean, I feel like that's his favorite storyline. My favorite storyline right now, I just this is totally off the top of my head because I looked, I wanted to compare. I pulled up the power ranking sheet. I am low key crushing the power rankings.
Let's
Funnily
go.
enough, I have Supernova, AOE, Team Fish Taco, and the best one of all, Maryville, correct, going into the midseason, which is the funniest thing ever. I guess I'll just take this time to kind of victory lap Maryville. I wish Nyarko was here so we could do it together. But my hottest take coming out of the primer was that I felt Maryville had the team synergy and maybe not the star power, but the team synergy and the backing of a university and all of collegiate that I thought that they could outperform expectations, especially the ones we had here. And while it's not the end of the season, we are halfway through. I am very happy to see that Maryville has slotted themselves into fifth, and not only have done that, but with some pretty convincing wins and having the most banger game of the North American Challengers League this split so far. If you missed game one of Maryville versus Flight Challengers, I implore you to go back and watch it because it was absolute insanity, and Scary Jerry is a maniac on Kaisa.
I think that game, by the way, is exactly what like I think that's the best summary of like who Maryville is and what their position is in this league, because they spend that whole game losing every objective to FlyQuest and falling behind more and more in gold, but they keep the kill count even the whole way through because they're taking good fights and they're performing well in those fights. That's what actually ends up winning it for them. Like there's just never a fight that FlyQuest can actually win, no matter how big their lead is.
There,
I told
there
you,
are,
pulling
there
them
are,
to their level.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's the name of the game.
There are a few moments in League nowadays, watching League, that like get me to go, with my jaw open. Watching Scary Jerry take some of those killer instincts to the back line had me going, like, jaw to the ground. I was like, what the?
Yeah.
It, just insanity.
I could follow up on that. Like I had two dynamics that I really liked this split so far. One was certainly the TLC one, and particularly the fact that APA is the clear best mid laner, and I'm really, really, really hopeful that he goes up sooner rather than later because I think that he is really, really good and should be the next most promising NA mid laner moving forward. Obviously, we know how NA mids tend to do in LCS, but I have really big hopes for
It's
APA. I
the
think that
JoJo
he's great.
MVP season, TDS. We don't have to live. We don't have to be afraid anymore. All right?
I hope it's
You
the
can.
case. Like I'm so hopeful for that.
NA Mid
And
is good
JoJo
again,
is
baby. We're
dangerous.
back on top. It's season 1.
It's really final. It's finally the time to shine. No more Reginald blue card memes. It's now JoJo MVP time.
Hey,
That's the future.
if
But oh,
if what's their faces didn't cheat against TSM, maybe they'd be
Oh,
North
I think it was
Azubu
a
Frost.
Azubu
Yeah,
Frost. Yeah,
Azubu
if
Frost.
Azubu Frost did cheat against Reginald's TSM team,
Man,
True.
and they would have a world championship, even though they weren't close to the final.
fair enough. But the one that the one dynamic that I really like is going to be following Slayer. It's the Maryville one, and it's particularly on my side because so far they certainly just shot my face and pretty much just told me your power rankings are wrong. I put them 10th. I still think maybe some thing could go completely wrong and they end up 10th. But so far, they've been the perfect example of how you play for your style and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Because once again, they just grab their opponents by the leg. They pull you down to the mud with them, and they force you to fight in their on the rules. And I feel like that's the perfect example of what a team needs to do if they are going to get outskilled in some senses. Like the Flycy game is a perfect example of that, and the way to execute on that, because it's not only pulling them to your level, but it's knowing what to do when you do that. And I think that Maribel has been doing that amazingly. Really good showcase of his style. Really nice showcase that collegiate maybe is not as far away from the normal ecosystem or the LoL esports ecosystem as I thought it was. And maybe there's future over there. I still think that it's not going to be easy. I don't think that it's the main way to try and pull out, but certainly it's a good showcase that there's exceptions that can come through, and hopefully in the future there's a bit more.
so, so I had one funny question that I think would be fun to end.
All right, let's do it.
So, Team Liquid LCS, third place right now in the LCS, to make Worlds, which was their entire mission with this roster, the last
Yep.
what 3 rosters, they'd have to win Summer. There's no other way to make it. If they don't do that, hypothetically, how many TLC players do you think should deserve promotion and will get promoted?
At the very least two,
Okay. And those
because
two,
100% Pioshik and Summit are not staying.
yeah.
I'm already doubting Pioshik staying even if they go to Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
So I already think there's a potential for Mir, and then Bradley would be the best. Well, Bradley, because it's in house, he already knows their dynamics and everything like that. I think would be the best, like stamp on top of the top lane if you want to not only develop someone but have him for a long while, because
Mhm.
it's already there. He's a good top laner and can play both styles. He has played both tanks and carries. I think tanks a bit better than carries, but he can play both of them. So I think it's the easiest one to feel. And then jungle, I think it's Pioshik is going to go away, but the issue is I'm not sure if Mir is staying either, because Mir is also Korean and he's also like he's not as young. I think he's 22 as of now. So there's
Mhm.
potential for him to maybe be looking for another team if he doesn't get the chance, or he may get called back to Korea because there's not that many youngers in great spots right now. Like Hawa had some issues, so maybe they call a jungler that is doing really good in NA, for example.
Could happen.
Yeah.
Um,
Bradley's also due. I mean, like, come on, guys. Like, TL, come on.
yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
it's
it's I don't know. It's gonna be interesting, right? Because he didn't get his shot last year, and I think he's having a worse year this year than he had last year. But I don't know. He's also like he still seems to be riding the hype, though pretty effectively. Like I think most people have a lot of respect for Bradley still. Um,
I also think like TL were going to go for their Korean thing anyway this year, so I feel like
yeah.
that
Well,
hampered on him in that sense.
Yeah,
But
so I
if
mean,
it fails, it's easier for him, I think.
And I think so. Background, right? We're not really an LCS podcast, but we are LCS viewers, and we do watch quite a bit of LCS. I think a lot of people don't know this because it's LCS broadcast never talks about this kind of like off-season meta, economic stuff. But I do think it's worth noting that Team Liquid, like while they tried this all-in Korean thing, they did not like hard commit on it. And this might be because they don't necessarily know that they want to be all Korean for forever. It might be because of the economic downturn and the fact that this is not a very cheap team. But they signed Pyosik and Summit to 1-year deals. Pyosik and Summit are up after this year. Core JJ is up after this year as well. So it's kind of going to be an opportunity to like stay or go on the whole Korean project. Because I mean, assuming you lose all three of those guys, you have Harry and Jan who speak English just fine.
Yeah, they're in a residence as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is Core JJ. So that's the thing is like, do you really? Yeah. It's going to be really tough to let go of Core JJ, but also like he's going to have to go military at some point. He's like, what is he, 24 now? Oh, he's way older than that.
Yeah, I think
he's 27, no?
Yeah, actually, he's 29. Core JJ is...
Okay, technically he should be already out. Technically.
Yeah, did he already do military or something? I don't know.
I would assume. I don't think you go that long without.
If I'm not... Does he have his green card? Because he think...
Does.
If I'm not wrong, how it works is that you don't need to do military, or you will not be forced if you don't go back to Korea. I think he wants to go back to Korea, so probably he has to do it. But if you don't go back and you're already a citizen in another place, kind of like...
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously they're not going to come hunt you down in North America, but...
yeah, exactly, that's the thing.
But if he wants to retain his Korean citizenship, I think he'd have to.
Yeah, that's the thing. So probably he will, but I think... he technically doesn't. Well, he technically doesn't need to go if he doesn't want to, and he doesn't want to return to Korea. But I'm pretty sure that's not the case. So more than likely, he has to leave this year.
Yeah. So I mean, this might actually be Core's. This might be Core's last year, actually.
Yeah.
So
unless he has already done it.
Right.
Unless.
So you guys know I like to think big picture on a lot of things. So when I propose this, my perfect offseason for TL would, in fact, be pulling Bradley, Mir, and APA up, and then keeping Core around to be the veteran leader.
Yeah.
And Jan, I think, has earned at least staying with TL with how he's performed so far. Because we all don't think they're going to Worlds. I mean, I would assume. I don't want to get too much into LCS, but it's a long shot that they win the summer.
Why do they need to win summer? I kind of brushed by that the first time, but
didn't they miss? Didn't they miss points?
They did, but we don't even do the points thing anymore. It's just top 3 go from playoffs. And then fourth gets to go to that fourth gets the match against Europe as well.
Oh.
So they could
top
still
3 from summer?
Wait, yeah, that's new. I forgot about that one actually.
Yeah, no, we got rid of
validate spring.
Yeah, a little bit.
Wow. Okay. So I guess they have a better shot, but I'm gonna run with the hypothetical they don't make it. Or even if they do, they're not gonna.
Yeah. The hypothetical. Whatever. The question I did is if they don't make it.
Yeah. So if they don't, I think it would be awesome to see Bradley, Mir, APA, Core's the veteran leader with Jan. I think that roster would be really fun. That roster would get all of NA's backing in the LCS, which would be also super cool. And the bonus tidbit that when TL was the faith of North America in a different game, they released these really awesome American jerseys for a CS major. They can bring those jerseys back. It's just like a perfect scenario. Hopefully somebody viewing this can picture the jerseys that I'm talking about, because I don't think these two do. But
cool. They had the Captain America jerseys even as well when they were in Super Team NA mode. So that was fun too.
I would argue only like difficulty for them if they don't make it and they have to go for a roster like that. Or Jay goes, obviously. I would say only support is the biggest like question mark, because I don't think they go Kim down. Kim down is probably one of the weaker parts.
He's impressed me though. I mean,
yeah, but I don't think he's still like, and this is coming from someone
he won't
that
be a suitable Core JJ replacement for sure.
Yeah, I don't think I'm not even sure if you would put him in LCS in any LCS roster at this point yet. That's my big concern. And
Mm-hmm.
coming from someone that loves Trial by Fire, probably says a lot that I would give him a bit more time before pulling him up. So the question mark would be, what support do they bring here?
Zazel.
This will be a good pick.
Could be an option.
Yeah.
He
I'm
did
pretty
say in
sure
an
Toast
interview.
wouldn't make a big buyout or a big issue out of that.
No.
Maybe.
He did say in his interview after their first NACL, I think they whatever their first series win. He did say that he got LCS offers.
Yeah.
For the last
Potentially as a
offseason.
sub, though. I don't know about as a starter. Or
Yeah.
maybe it was like
Yeah.
Dignitas, and he's like,
It
I'll
might have
take my
been
chances.
Dignitas or Immortals. Yeah, he's like, all right, I'll stick with these guys.
Yeah.
But imagine that team. I mean, even if Core doesn't make it, like imagine they get Zazel. That's just like America's team, man. The LCS. I mean,
Agree. He is Captain America. I'm on board for that. All right.
some fun
Honestly,
hypotheticals.
surprised by the way that no one has brought up the core scenario. Just a quick thing. I'm surprised that no one has really commented on the fact that this may be his last split.
I know, right? Like, they never talk about stuff like that.
It's actually surprising.
I'm looking
Where
at
did
his
he-
history. He's been playing Pro League of Legends since 2013. And
Yeah,
in 2013, he was 19.
so he didn't have time for
I
it
don't,
because
yeah,
it's
I don't know when he
barely
would have had
2
time
years.
to do military.
So, as someone that listens to a lot of K-pop and has since how this is supposed to work, it's I think a year and something, a year and 8 months. Yeah, the TDS background facts.
Well,
It's a year and 8 months if I'm not wrong. So technically, almost 2 years.
who's the
It's
DR
impossible, and since the age of 18. So it's kind of impossible for him to have done it since the moment he turned 18 to it. Like,
Yeah.
it's really, really difficult because of the time he started playing.
All right. Well, let's wrap things up there. Either way,
Yeah.
maybe there's been a fresh cut. Maybe we listened to all of this discussion about Korean LCS players. But thank you all for tuning in. It's been a fun week at the NACL, and we have got 3 more weeks before we get towards those playoffs. So stay tuned to the league. Stay tuned to the Salt Mine for more takes on the league, and we will see you all next time.